Hello there, fellow Skeleton Crew fans, and welcome to Ask MandR episode 333, the series where I answer your questions about Lego Star Wars, or really anything else. If you have a topic or question from next week's episode, drop in the comment section down below. Hit the like button if you guys enjoy. And this video is sponsored by Whatnot, who's got a pretty incredible event going on this weekend. We'll talk more about that later, but let's get to our first viewer question from Gus McCall, who says, if Lego knows that people will continue to buy overpriced sets, then won't they just continue to raise the prices? And I'm no economic major. I took one course of economics in college and that was it. But, I mean, yeah, seems to be pretty on the money here. I mean, clearly if something is selling really well for $10, then it will become 11 for Lego at least, and then it'll sell really well for 11, and then it'll become 12, and it sells really well at 12, and then it'll become 13, and then it sells really good at 13, so why not 15? And then, hey, we've just sold a bajillion Final First Battle Packs for 30, so why not just sell the regular Battle Pack for 20 now? And you can kind of see that's a good example of the Battle Packs going up in price over time. Now, inflation is also a factor with some of the prices that we're seeing, obviously, but some of it's egregious when you even compare it to the inflation prices of the original versions of sets like that. Now, I definitely think and feel like I've seen people saying every Lego set ever is overpriced for over a decade at this point. It might actually be a little bit different this time. It definitely feels like there are a lot more people piling on to this issue, but I think Lego might be reaching the peak of what they can squeeze out of their customers at this point, because a lot of people are very upset about a lot of the pricing, even on stuff that I think is, I think the ARC 170 at $70 is fairly reasonable, but maybe it's only fairly reasonable in the context of Ahsoka's Interceptor is $45, and maybe that's why I think it's reasonable. But you get my point, though. Like, even things that I think are reasonable, I'm seeing most people just say is absolutely outrageous. And so to that point, I wonder if we are going to see the price increases kind of come to a halt and plateau here soon, because I think a lot of people will just stop buying. I feel like we are reaching those prices where you got to kind of look at it and be like, yeah, man, I'm going to take my money somewhere else. I'm going to go buy some V-Bucks and buy a skin on Fortnite. Oh, that's probably a worse way to use your money, I guess. Definitely a great observation there by Gus, and I think if you look at certain things throughout Lego's history and certain sets and patterns, you can see exactly what he's talking about.
Never do the next job for what you did the last one for until the market tells you.
Carter Kent says, don't know if I want to pay $45 for that Interceptor. Do you have an idea of when it will go on sale? So most sets nowadays, I think, aren't really allowed to go on sale for the first 3 months. I think stores are like contractually obligated to keep the full retail price for at least the first 3 months. I've seen or heard of that in recent years, because it didn't necessarily used to be that way. There used to be times where Walmart on day one would have stuff for 20% off. You don't see that anymore. It's not happening. So really, you're going to have to wait about 3 months, and you should. I think it's incredibly stupid for most consumers to be buying things on day one with zero incentive. Wait for the 20% off, but that's kind of how these prices are made now, is it's made for you to get the 20% off, and then they're still making bundles of money. So I don't know, man. If you look at stuff that came out last year, summer 23, you can see some even deeper discounts at 40, closer to 50% in some cases. And so it would absolutely benefit you to wait. You get zero benefit of buying it day one. The only people that should buy it day one are people like me, frankly, because I'll make content on it, and it's kind of my business to make a review out of it, right? But anyone else gets zero benefit other than like 3 more months of your entire life to look at it on the shelf, I guess. Unless you have like a use for it immediately, man, you should wait, is my point. Everyone should wait every time. All right, warming up here. Gonna talk Revenge of the Sith Anniversary. Commander Thorne says, in a way, I'm upset that there's not many ROTS sets next year, but in another way, I'd rather wait until 2030 when they'll do a massive 25th anniversary of ROTS, and there will be a whole bunch of sets that year. And I think part of the disappointment with this year isn't that there's not simply just a logo on the box and they're celebrating the anniversary. It's that, and this is far from confirmed, there's still very much a chance that we will see a few more Revenge of the Sith sets later in the year. It's just not feeling that way, and that's kind of what I've been talking about in some videos recently. They very easily could have done a bunch of sets for 2025, and that's, I think, what a lot of people are disappointed by. It's simply that wasted potential. And yeah, sure, the 25th anniversary is on the table. That's 5 more years from now. That's a long time to wait for people that have been waiting a long time for a Palpatine's arrest or a Palpatine versus Yoda type of duel set, and so many other iconic Revenge of the Sith things, but it might just be how long we have to wait at this point. That's also not to say they can make Revenge of the Sith or any other movie sets any year. They do all of the time. Not everything always has to be on an anniversary. I think this anniversary idea, I feel like I've even gotten a little too like focused in on it with certain things, is that, you know, they've always made sets all of the time, and not everything has to only come on its anniversary. And now the other thing I wanted to address on top of your comment with the Revenge of the Sith anniversary potential is what I've seen a lot of people saying, both on my rumor video, my Ask MandR, and many other places. Himothy says, why did people think that it was an anniversary year? LEGO has made it clear that they only do real celebrations of movies on the 25th anniversary. And it's just this general idea that I'm seeing that everyone that thought LEGO would possibly celebrate the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith is dumb, stupid, and dumb. And I just don't understand why other fans think that way. They have only ever celebrated one 25th anniversary for a Star Wars movie ever, and that was this year with The Phantom Menace. So all of a sudden, LEGO does one thing one time, and people are like, well, this must mean they're going to do it every time, which might be the case. They very well could have chosen a couple years ago, basically, to go in this direction and be like, all right, The Phantom Menace, 25th anniversary 2024, we'll do some sets then. Attack of the Clones, 25th anniversary 2027. And Revenge of the Sith, 25th anniversary in 2030, and we'll go hard for that then. Obviously, that doesn't mean, we can get other, movie sets from those movies in other years, as I discussed. The UCS Slave 1 is coming out next year. Obviously, not an anniversary year. Nothing ever has to be an anniversary year. But, like I said, we just kind of hone in on that right now. It's kind of the hot topic for a lot of people. But anyway, as far as anniversary celebrations for Star Wars content, and when I define this, it's basically anything that they have put an extra marking on the box for content. You've got the Clone Wars 20th anniversary in 2023. You've got Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary in 2023. You had Empire Strikes Back 40th anniversary back in 2020. And then I'm fairly certain the only other movie with a logo on the box was The Empire Strikes Back with its 30th anniversary. So as you can see, all of these anniversaries, bar The Phantom Menace, end with a 0 and not a 5. But it's just something I've seen a lot of, and I wanted to take a little bit of time to give a bit of a rebuttal to, a bit of the thinking behind why a 25th anniversary is not the given, they've done it every time type of track record, because they've only ever done that once. Danny says, are you happy with the diversity of modern LEGO Star Wars sets 2022 to 2025? I believe this was the largest complaint in 2021. Yeah, back in that January 2021 wave, where it was like another X-Wing, another TIE Fighter, Luke's Landspeeder just came. There were a lot of repeat original trilogy sets around then. I think they've gotten a lot better with the diversity as far as the number of sets per movie and spreading that love kind of equally. Basically completely omitting the sequels for the past few years worked out pretty well, I think. But yeah, I feel like they've been pretty diverse with their set selection from different pieces of media. I feel like that's been a real highlight of the theme of one of the things that they have done well. The quality might not be that good in some cases. The prices might be way too high, but I feel like at the very least, they've got a good distribution of things from different things. So this video is sponsored by Whatnot and their Winter Wonderland holiday event taking place from December 12th to the 14th, where sellers across Whatnot, including myself, will be taking part in doorbusters. That means 50% off some incredible items. For my stream on Friday the 13th at 5 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have 10 of the 2024 Imperial Star Destroyer sets to sell at 50% off as a doorbuster. Yes, that means $80 per set. In between those drops, I've got a fantastic selection of LEGO Star Wars minifigures that I'll be auctioning, all starting at $1 each, and apparently Whatnot Santa Bot will be randomly hopping into streams and gifting to viewers. If you're a new user and sign up with my link in the description below, you can get a $15 credit to use on your first purchase, and don't miss my stream on Friday the 13th at 5, and the many others happening on Whatnot this weekend during their Winter Wonderland holiday event. Again, link in the description below. Let's get back to the questions. Next question from Mikey says, after watching the show, I looked again at the Onyx Cinder from Skeleton Crew and saw that the new droid is not in the set. I think he's very cool to get in LEGO form. Do you think that there will be more Skeleton Crew sets in the future? Hopefully with the droid. So as soon as I saw that droid pop up on the Onyx Cinder, spoilers. As soon as I saw that droid pop up on the Onyx Cinder, I was like, oh man, he's not in the LEGO set. That sucks. That's a real missed opportunity there, as you tend to have with some of these new shows from time to time. You just watch it for the first time. You're like, man, could have had that there. But the saving grace of that is that, spoiler again, technically the droid dies or doesn't make it onto the ship when, Jude Law, what's his name in the set? Jod is the minifig we ended up getting in the set, and he doesn't join the crew until after the droid is no longer part of the crew. Now, I don't see why they couldn't have just given you all 6 figures for the $140, but they do have the excuse of, well, the droid wasn't part of the crew when Jod was part of the crew, and so we were trying to represent that part of the show, and maybe that's what they can get away with, obviously, but yeah, I would have liked to have the droid there for the value for your money. Now, we're only 2 episodes in, and I will say I did very much enjoy the first 2 episodes. I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed the first 2 episodes. I was smiling ear to ear for like a lot of it. Like, it was just a very enjoyable show. But again, being only 2 episodes in, I have not seen anything else that I think would make for a a good set. I don't think we're going to be getting modulars or like the equivalent of the Simpsons house to any of the characters' houses from the show, as kind of oddly cool as that would be for a Star Wars set because it's super unique. I just don't see it. There are still quite a few episodes left, so that could change. The other caveat to that is if you want that droid, the droid would have really only fit in the Onyx Cinder because he was only ever in the Onyx Cinder, and then technically he did get off at the port. So if they did some sort of like port battle set or whatever, you could get away with that, I guess. But yeah, it seems unlikely that that droid will ever make it into LEGO Star Wars form unless they remake the Onyx Cinder or do a UCS Onyx Cinder 5 or 10 years from now. But yeah, I would probably say that's never going to happen. Hudson said, ever considered working at an official LEGO store or some type of LEGO store? So I had never lived close enough to a LEGO store to work there, but when I was looking at colleges, I wanted to go to UCF, and if I had gone to UCF, which is North Orlando basically, I would have loved to have worked at the LEGO store at Disney Springs, but it would have been a bit of a drive because I think it's like 45 minutes away. The point is that was like the only dream of ever working at the LEGO store. Otherwise, it was never really sensible because I've always just lived a little bit too far away to make it work. But if you are in the high school, early college age and not, looking at getting a serious career job, unless maybe you do want to work at LEGO or for LEGO, it could be a good starting place, work your way up to management. But if you're looking for a summer job or a college job, high school to hold you over, the LEGO store seems great. From what I can tell, most people seem to enjoy it. It seems like one of the lesser evils of retail jobs to me. From the outside looking in, I've never worked retail, so I don't know the ins and outs of everything, but it seems like a pretty clean store. You put the boxes on the shelves, you help customers. Unless a kid throws up on the floor, you're not dealing with too much of a mess, So it seems like a reasonably relaxed environment, but it also probably depends on the store that you work at, because if you work at the Orlando Disney Springs store, it probably really actually sucks because it's just so many customers so consistently all day, every day, versus sometimes I'll walk into a store at a mall in New York on a weekday at noon and there's like 2 people in there. And that must be kind of chill. And so it might just depend on the store you work at too. But yeah, that was the one time I considered it and unfortunately just never came to fruition. Eisen says, we have not had an official anniversary for a single piece of prequel media, not to mention the complete lack of sets for the prequel era. Do you think that LEGO has a bias, and what takes on the topic do you have? I don't know if a bot wrote this, but what you wrote is just completely, utterly false and wrong. We have absolutely had official anniversaries for prequel media that they've celebrated for both The Phantom Menace and the Clone Wars in the last 2 years, in fact. And they certainly have been making plenty of prequel sets. I do think LEGO has a bias, though. I would not argue against that. I think that they put more effort and care and money into certain things versus other things, and that goes for the whole company. That's not even just a prequel versus original trilogy, this versus Clone Troopers versus Stormtroopers type of argument, whatever. It's just very clear if you look at certain things that there's more care and money and effort given to some things than others, which will always be true no matter what, because you cannot have complete and total equality probably like that, but boy does it suck when you're on the other end of it. Phil Can has a pretty good question here and something I've kind of touched on a little bit in some of my recent rumor videos, but he says, when do you think we will receive a new V-19 Torrent starfighter? Unfortunately, it seems like one of those ships that falls under the radar, but I think the design is so unique and I would really be interested in seeing how a modern Torrent would hold up against the, in my opinion, flawless 2008 ship. So there is currently a rumor in summer of 2025 that we will be getting a new Clone Pilot minifigure, the Clone Pilot that we should have gotten in the UCS gunship all those years ago. And with that Clone Pilot minifigure, obviously comes some type of Clone Trooper set. And right now, that's completely unknown. I speculated in my video, it could possibly be a new gunship, it could be a Venator. Those sets in the past have had Clone Pilots and obviously could use a Clone Pilot if you had those sets. Now, I don't necessarily think we'll be getting those sets next summer. So the V-19 Torrent is, in my opinion, a very likely set to accompany this Clone Pilot. Like, it just makes all the sense in the world. It could also have some other cool figures, whatever. But a V-19 Torrent with a Clone Pilot makes sense, and I think it's more likely than a Republic attack shuttle. Like, it's at the top of my list. Now, it's hard to guess with things like this because there's probably a dozen different sets that they could do that could include a Clone Pilot. Could be a Microfighter V-19, could be a Microfighter Republic gunship. They did that before with a Clone Pilot. They could just do a new version with a new Clone Pilot. Just prepare for disappointment in that way, I suppose, all of the time now, because that's what they did with Plo Koon's and Captain Rex's Y-Wing. But anyway, summer of 2025 is absolutely the current most likely time that set would come out. If it doesn't happen, I would maybe say summer of 2028, 20 years of the 2008 Clone Wars, which is when the original version came out. But I'm very hopeful with that Clone Pilot that would be the set that would come in. Fingers crossed for next summer. I'm hoping that we'll get some summer like rumors soon, but the only rumor right now is that we're getting the pilot. So yeah, there's only so many things that could have a pilot, so hopefully the V-19 Torrent ends up being it for our sake here. Next one from Mansington, he says, do you think it's fair to say that people need to stop comparing prices of current sets to non-inflated prices of past sets? With the new Interceptor, for example, I personally think it's a little silly, or disingenuous might be a better word, to compare a $45 price tag to the $30 price tag from 4 years ago, rather than comparing it to the inflated price of $37. While I agree the set is still overpriced, I think people are dragging it a little bit more than it deserves. Okay. First off, this set deserves to be dragged. I don't care. It is the most overpriced set of the year so far. Give them time. There'll be more. But it absolutely deserves to be dragged. Now, it's not as crazily overpriced as people present it to be comparing to the prices without inflation, but it is insane. I do think you're right, though. I do think you have a very good point. It's something that I think, I would like to enact some change within the community for. You just have to compare to inflation-adjusted prices. You are absolutely correct. It is absolutely not fair. It's not a one-to-one proper, correct comparison, and that's why within my comparison videos, I've always compared them to their inflated retail prices, and also a little bit what the market price is nowadays, but that's not relevant to what Lego's production costs are and whatever. And there's probably more hidden costs behind the scenes. We can't account for everything, but the inflation adjusted costs is the least you can do. But it is wrong of people when they go like, well, this was $40 in 2005 and this is $40 now. Look at how Lego is scamming you, when you have left out half of the story being that this would be like $60 in today's money. Actually, I should look up exactly what it is. $65. So you can see there's a pretty substantial difference there for the extra $25 inflation adjusted. As much as I don't want to defend Lego for their pricing and different, you just have to give them the fair playing field so you can actually have an informed discussion and decision on what you think is overpriced versus what isn't. Rebuild the Galaxy says, will the 25th anniversary figures be taken out of the boxes in 2025? Because of course the 25th anniversary is only this year in 2024. And my reaction to reading your question at first was, well, of course not. This is kind of a silly question. And then I was like, well, would anyone here really put it past Lego? With all of their modern cost-cutting measures and just kind of the things that they do, would anyone be shocked if they did? They're not going to, but figures are not going to be taken out of the boxes. It's nothing to worry about. I just thought it was a fun bit of thought experiment that hey, is it actually impossible that Lego would do something like that? Probably not. But to this point, they've given us no real reason to think that they would do exactly that. And our final question from Maddie says, do you think the rumored 2 new helmet sets in 2025, Jango Fett and AT-AT Pilot, will reignite the helmet line? So I've got a couple things with this. I've said a few times recently that Lego Star Wars designers themselves said that the helmet line was dead basically 2 years ago, or with the last ones that came out, and then they skipped a year and it came right back. And that's the opposite of what happened when they skipped battle packs for a year. They did not say battle packs were dead. They said, oh, you never know, maybe soon, so it must have been decided at some point that helmet sets were basically done, I think. But I think maybe what's happened, and this is just complete conjecture on my part, my best guess from my head, I don't get to talk to all the designers and have these conversations. I think maybe you have your helmet sets this year, and then next year diorama sets. And I think if you go flip-flop back and forth with those, it actually works really well, because you also have the MIDI scale line, which I think the MIDI scale line is the most important line to keep consistent. At least if you're looking at the next 5 years of Lego Star Wars sets, you can just do a lot of things in MIDI scale and it's going to sell really well because it's a smaller, basically UCS set that's really nice for display. And I think there's a big market for that Lego hadn't been tapping into. And I think if you have 3 MIDI scale, 3 helmet sets, and 3 diorama sets releasing every year, it's just too much. You can't have that many adult specific, very expensive or overpriced sets, right? I think scaling back a little bit makes a lot of sense to me. And if that scaling back, and this is far from confirmed, they could just go helmet sets every year. They could do helmet sets this year and do nothing next year from either. But if you flip-flop with dioramas and helmets every other year, I think it might actually work out pretty well. Let's do the math. So this year, 25 would be helmet sets, 26 dioramas, 27 helmet sets, 28 dioramas, 29 helmet sets, 2030, Revenge of the Sith, dioramas confirmed. You heard it here first. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Don't miss my Whatnot stream. Get in with the link in the description below. If you guys enjoyed, hit the like button, and I'll see you next time.